Do you remember watching movies in your childhood and thinking, there's something going on between these two girls, and why would a man be there? You're picking up these vibes for reasons that you probably won't unpack for another 10 years, but you remember thinking it. Well, now we're going to unpack them all, and trust me, you were not seeing things. These movies should have been gay. Hi, my name is Caitlin. Welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the missed gay potential of 2000 sports movies. This video idea came to be because this heated rivalry craze got me thinking about lesbian sports movies and just lesbian sports media in general, and I realized there aren't many. But if you look back into the 2000s, which was an era where there were just lots of sports movies being made about women, which, great. Everyone watches women's sports, but they were never explicitly or overtly queer. So it was a lot of just subtext and queer coding. And that's not to say a lot of queer kids didn't see themselves in these movies. And then earlier this year, I watched The Ice Princess, which is like an ice skating Disney movie. And then I made a tweet that was like, this is my heated rivalry. And it like blew up. And then it got me thinking about all the other sports movies that I've watched that have that same kind of vibe. And so that's this video was born of the missed gay potential of 2000 sports movies. I managed to come up with 8 movies that fall into this category, and we're going to cover all types of sports from soccer to cheerleading to gymnastics. And so I think the fact that I was able to gather so many movies for this list, I was asking myself, why are sports movies queer coded? And I think the reason that it's specifically teen sports movies, which are targeted at young people who are trying to find themselves, is that I think it has to do a lot with identity and gender roles and kind of what's expected of women in society, especially at that time in the 2000s of, there was a very strict, this is what girls do and this is what boys do. And these teen movies are meant to show that girls can play sports and girls can be really good at sports. And you shouldn't be pigeonholed or put in a box because you're a girl and, that's only a boy's thing. And yeah, so there were these like really strong ideals of femininity, and sports breaks that. Sports isn't traditionally feminine, and, there's a lot of taboos about like, girls working out and girls building muscle. And it's like, if they want to be really good athletes, they have to do what they have to do. Within these movies, there are these themes of embracing things outside of the gender norm and doing things that aren't traditionally for women. And that's a lesson that a character will go through in the movie, in that going against what society tells you to do and being something different and something other is this narrative for queerness as well that you can see yourself in. In the same way that if there is a girl who wants to play sports and is kind of going against her femininity, there is another kind of mirror to someone who is going against the grain of like heteronormativity and, being gay. I acknowledge that like women's sports does have more out gay athletes than say, male sports. That's not to say that every woman who plays sports is gay. Like there are straight female athletes, but like statistically there are more like lesbians in sports. So when you watch these sports movies, it's kind of unbelievable that there aren't gay people in these movies. And another thing you'll find in these movies is because girls playing sports is so taboo, the girls will have to hide going to practice or going to games, or sometimes even they'll gender swap and play for the boys team and pretend to be a boy just so that they can play the sport that they want. Again, there are these narrative parallels to queerness and, having to perform and hide your sexuality while you go off and do gay things, but then to your friends and family, you're straight. And then with these movies as well, because they're kind of teen flicks, there is this romance component. And a lot of the times, this straight romance is just shoehorned in. And you're like, why was this necessary? And then you're kind of like, okay, I guess they're trying to like beat the gay allegations. And it's like, it's not my fault that you made your characters really gay. So that's why I think that specific genre of movies are queer coded. But now the question is, why weren't they made gay? And I think the biggest reason is the climate that they were made in. It is the 2000s and people weren't very accepting of gay people or even in media. And I think at that time in the 2000s, there just started to be some prominent lesbians on screen, like Willow from Buffy. And then we have Natasha Lyonne's character from But I'm a Cheerleader. But it's still an uphill battle, and representation is going down as it is right now. 25 years later, Disney keeps saying, oh yeah, our first openly gay character in the history of the studio. And like they say it like 5 different times. And it's like they can't even commit to that. I mean, look at the backlash now that lesbian stories get, right? 2-second scene in Lightyear with a lesbian couple, everyone's outraged. And then you have mainstream shows like House of the Dragon, Pluribus that get review bombed after one lesbian kiss. So can you imagine if they did an actual lesbian romance in a Disney Channel original movie in the 2000s. It wouldn't happen. They wouldn't let it. At that time, you really only got subtext. I don't know. It's kind of nice to look back on now and be like, oh, like there were little crumbs here and there, but like obviously you always wish that there were more. But for the time, they were able to do a decent amount. And one thing I want to say before I start talking about the movies is I know there are people that say, why do you have to make everything about lesbians? Not everything has to be sexual. Why can't girls just be friends? And I have a couple things to say about that. One, just because I'm saying that this could have been gay, it's not inherently sexual. And so that's on you for assuming that lesbianism is sexual just by default. Two, God forbid someone have a bit of imagination. And then three, it's not nothing. If you have any semblance of a gaydar or you're sapphic, you will see something in these movies, and you probably have. So this isn't just pulled out of my ass. So let's get into the movies and the evidence for why these movies should have been gay. So starting with the movie that kind of birthed the idea of this video, Ice Princess, with Michelle Trachtenberg and Hayden Panettiere. It's an ice skating movie, and we're going to look at the characters Casey and Jen. So both Casey and Jen are ice skaters. And my first piece of evidence is when they introduce Jen into the movie, it is a slow-mo walk down the hall. Casey's like in school and she looks down the hall and there's Jen and she looks up and she's like slow-mo walking towards her. If I know anything about romance movies, even Disney movies, slow-mo is reserved for a love interest or a crush. Time doesn't stop for anybody else. Casey's actual love interest in the show, who is Jen's brother, which we will get to in a little bit, he doesn't get that. He gets like his little like hero moment with the Zamboni, but he never gets slow-mo. Also, you watch this movie and Hayden Panettiere walked on that set with a gay agenda. She's playing a gay. And my biggest source for this is the lipstick scene. Jen's putting on Casey's lipstick for a tournament or whatever. It's just there's a lot of tension. That's what I'll say. She gives up her spot for nationals, Jen, because her mom cheated Casey out of her spot, right? And so kind of in an act of rebellion for her mom, but also for Casey, she gives up her spot so Casey can perform. And like, does a friend do that? Just a friend? I don't know. I think there's something more there. At the end of the movie, Casey does get with Jen's brother, the Zamboni driver. I just think this is funny because this is going to start a trend of a girl ending up with the other girl's brother when she should have ended up with the girl. And you'll see in these next couple movies where it'll pop up again. But I just think it's very interesting that, like, not to say that siblings are like identical towards each other in terms of like personality or anything like that, but I just think it's funny that like it had to be a relative and not just some like random guy. And so there is that connection there of like my best friend's brother, but also it could be us. As I was mentioning before about that theme of a secret life, there is this broader narrative of Casey having to hide from her mom that she is going ice skating because her mom only wants her to be a physicist. Her mom wants her to focus on school and go to like an Ivy League. And her mother is worried about the shelf life of an ice skating career. And I think that's really interesting because if we do some like parallels here, if physics is being straight and ice skating is being gay, her mom is scared about her future ice skating, or a lot of parents have worries about their queer kids and, you know, how they'll be treated in the future if they come out and all that stuff. At the end of the movie, Casey decides to live her truth and ice skate. And then her mom accepts her decision, aka coming out. As I said in the intro, we'll see that theme of a secret life with the sports and everything later on. We're only on the first movie, but our next movie has Hayden Panettiere at the scene of the crime again in Bring It On, All or Nothing, which is a cheerleading movie, a sequel to Bring It On. It is Hayden Panettiere and Solange, who is Beyonce's sister, if you didn't know. And Hayden Panettiere's character moves away from her like white, rich neighborhood and is now in a predominantly black neighborhood, and she joins the cheer team. And it's kind of at first like a rivals thing, but then she is embraced by the team. I think here it's mainly vibes of the way that they're looking at each other. The opening cafeteria dance where Camille is dancing almost for Hayden's character. Like, it is in a way of like trying to make her jealous, and they're just like all up in each other's faces. When people talk about Ice Princess, they also talk about Bring It On because of Hayden's characters in those two. However, this isn't the only Bring It On movie to be gay, so let's take a look at where it started in the first Bring It On with Missy and Torrance. Missy is a new cheerleader at Torrance's school and are a little angsty at first, but they become best friends. She's kind of stylized as grunge, and Torrance has a homoerotic friendship with her, I swear to God. As I was talking about in Ice Princess, Torrance's love interest is Cliff, who is Missy's brother. There are a lot of things here that like could suggest a love triangle if you want it to, of Missy is jealous that Torrance likes Cliff and not her. Narratively in the script, it is kind of like, oh, you're going after my brother. But like, she could have been accepting towards that, like Jen was in Ice Princess. In this movie, Missy is a little more pissed off about it, and you could argue that she purposefully interrupts the moment when they're about to kiss on the swings. And there are parts where you can kind of tell that she is upset that Torrance likes her brother, like at their sleepover at her house. And then there's also that big reveal when Missy opens her front door and she has her cheer uniform on, and Torrance has like the biggest reaction of all of them, and she's just like hyping her up endlessly. Like she's very excited to see her in that cheer uniform. And then there's the part where Missy's like, you guys have been stealing the Clover's cheers, and they go over and the Clover is about to fight them, and Missy is very protective of Torrance, and she's like, you know, getting in front of her, and then she like caresses her arm, which is like, why did you need to do that? And I think also a lot of the subtext is because Elijah Dushku is playing it gay. Like she has a flirty vibe with everybody. I mean, if you've seen Buffy, you know what I'm talking about. Buffy and Faith, like them two, same deal. And then to finish off the whole series of getting with another character's brother instead of getting with her, She's the Man, which is such an iconic movie. And it is a 12th Night retelling, which ends up being like a gender swap. So Viola, who is Amanda Bynes' character, she wants to play soccer and her team gets cut. And she's like, okay, I'll just play on the boys' team. And they won't let her play. And so she pretends to be her brother Sebastian, goes to another school and dresses up as a boy and plays soccer and proves herself, and then everything happens from there. And so here we have another instance of a secret life in sport. And I think what's so fun about these gender swap movies is they are just inherently gay. No matter which way you put it, they are. Because we have Viola, who likes her roommate Duke, but she looks like Sebastian. And so she's kind of like flirting with him. And there's like kind of a vibe, but like Duke's like, wait, you're a guy. So it's gay that way. And then there's another character called Olivia who is flirting with Sebastian, but that's really Viola. And the thing that puzzles me about this movie is that Olivia ends up with the real Sebastian, even though she's been flirting with Viola as Sebastian this whole time and has fallen in love with the personality and character of Viola. And so she doesn't know Sebastian. She doesn't know this man. And they like kind of barely look alike. So like, why would she end up with that guy? She should have ended up with Viola. It like makes no sense because she doesn't know this man and she's been flirting with Viola this whole time. And there are so many reasons to support that actually Olivia is a lesbian with Compet, which we will get to in like 2 seconds. But also in this movie, there's a lot of references about coming out. At the debutante training with Viola and Olivia, someone's like, who's ready to come out? So like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then also the principal tells Viola as Sebastian, come out of the closet and accept yourself for who you truly are. And it's like, again, wink, wink. So there's a lot of like tongue-in-cheek moments there. So getting to my whole Olivia Viola agenda, they have a classic meet cute where Olivia bumps into Viola holding some books and they like, you know, pick them up together or whatever. And obviously every time I say Viola, this is Viola as Sebastian. Oh my God. See, these names are so similar to each other. They like mess me up. I'm like trying to imagine the character in my head. Olivia confides in Viola that she only feels comfortable talking to her. So now my evidence for why Olivia has some compet going on. If you don't know what compet is, it is compulsory heterosexuality. And that kind of has to do with a heteronormative society and how women are conditioned to be straight. And so when you're coming out, you kind of have this idea of what your life is supposed to be, and you kind of have to combat that because society is telling you you have to marry a man, you have to have kids, you have to kind of be feminine and do this whole thing. When you're contemplating whether you actually aren't straight, you have that battle inside of you of like, this is how my life is supposed to be, but this is how I want to be, and there's these things, you know, going on. Throughout the movie, Olivia, I feel like, exhibits that. You know, she says at one point that Duke is good looking, but he's not the guy for me. And so that's because she has the odds for Sebastian, aka Viola. She appreciates that Sebastian hasn't tried anything with her. So that's kind of like suggestive of like, maybe she doesn't even want to be with a guy, you know? They do the kissing booth at the carnival and like prefacing with kissing booths are just like horrible and disgusting and like, why do we make girls do that? But she did not have a fun time at the kissing booth kissing the guys. You know, she thinks Sebastian is cute, but Sebastian is Olivia, who is a girl, and she says that he's delicate and refined and handsome, and it's like maybe she just likes delicate men, but also maybe she likes women. I know within the movie that Viola does like Duke. I accept that. However, I just think Olivia should not have ended up with Sebastian, and I actually think she's a lesbian, kind of given all of that. So there's my evidence. The missed potential here could have been couples, but also just like a singular character of like, why didn't you make them gay? You know, because she genuinely doesn't know this man. So why does she want to date him? Surprisingly, there is more than one 12th Night sports movie. This one's called Motorcrossed, and I was surprised to find out that this one actually came before She's the Man. And I feel like within the culture, She's the Man's a little bit more iconic. But Motorcrossed is about a girl who masquerades as her brother to dirt bike race, to motocross, where they get on bikes and like do tricks and like go around in the mud and the dirt. So in this movie, they're both really skilled motocrossers. They come from a family of like motorcycle people. So there's Andy, who's the girl who ends up motorcycle racing for her brother. And so right before his big race, her brother gets injured. And so she's like, well, I will step up and race and pretend to be him. As her brother, she definitely dresses like a masked lesbian, backwards hats, oversized clothes, flannels, you know the deal. Here, again, there's a secret life because her dad doesn't want her to get hurt by motocrossing. And so she has to hide the fact that she's doing it with her mom. Watching this movie did remind me of this Letterboxd review I saw. I think it was from Bo and Yang, actually, for After Sun, where he was like, she rode the motorcycle games at the arcade and it made her gay. Like, that's what happens. And it's true, because I used to love the motorcycle racing games at the arcade. This movie, I think, would have been gayer if there were other women in it. There's really like her mom, her, and like this one girl that like this guy kind of likes. But other than that, there's not a lot of women in this movie. Again, this is a gender swap movie, so a lot of the kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge stuff is playing on the fact that the audience knows that she's a girl masquerading as her brother. So there's parts where Andy will be like, oh, I relate pretty well with girls. Andy's love interest, his name's Dean, and he'll say that like she's a genius with women. And it's like, well, is it because she is a girl or like she should be with girls, you know? And then there's a part where she compliments another girl's perfume and she's like, it smells better on you. And so like that was kind of like an instinctual like girl thing to say, but also like it could be gay. Yeah, like I said before, that gender swap movies are just inherently gay, no matter which way you put it. And here in this movie, they really like play up the romance between Dean and Andy when she's supposed to be her brother. And so they do this whole like motorbike training montage with this like kind of romantic song. And then at the end of the montage, they jump in the water and just start like wrestling with each other. It is kind of like cute because we know that that's Andy, the girl. But for Dean, he thinks that's another guy. So then it's like, why are we two guys wrestling in the water? I think Dean flirted back knowing that Andy was a guy. So yeah, any way you spin it, gender swap movies, gay. So now another movie where a character just looks like a straight up lesbian is Bend It Like Beckham. Natalie Portman's character in Bend It Like Beckham is a lesbian. I don't make the rules. I don't. Hello, this is Caitlin from the future saying that yes, I know that Natalie Portman is not in this movie and that it is Keira Knightley. I don't know where that came from. I had it in my notes for some reason as Natalie Portman, and then I also wrote Keira Knightley. So at the end of the segment, I do realize that I've been saying the wrong actress the whole time. But I will say Natalie Portman like 2 or 3 more times and just know that I know that it is Keira Knightley. So before you click off the video and say this girl doesn't know what she's talking about, that is my excuse. If you don't know what Bend It Like Beckham's about, it's about 2 girls, Jess and Jules, and they are trying to play soccer in England. And Jess comes from a Punjabi household that doesn't want her daughter playing sports and doing like manly things. I think what's the most frustrating thing about this movie is that they acknowledge the lesbian implications of Jess and Jules' relationship the whole time. I mean, I feel like they made it as gay as they could have within the confines of the time period that they made it in. They just like heavily loaded it with subtext. You watch the movie and everyone's like, Jess and Jules are gay, the characters in the movie. And you're like, yeah, they are. So like, why aren't we doing it? And instead we have their coach in this like love triangle between Jess and Jules, and they're both going after their like coach that's a little older than them. And I just think it's kind of weird. I think that romance storyline is weird, and I think it's kind of shoehorned in and not really like earned. And at first I thought it was to offset the inherent gayness between Jess and Jules, and for them to be like, actually no, like this can't be like an actually gay movie because look, there's a man. They both like the man. They're not gay. In my research for this video, I did see that the director was talking about how when she initially wrote the script, Coach was much older and he was kind of like a father figure. But then they were working with this company and someone from the company was like, what if, hear me out, you made the coach younger and actually a love interest for Jess? I don't know if that was the move. I really don't. I could have done without it. So now you're stuck with the love triangle, right? And with one thing I hate is a love triangle. And I feel like they should have just left it and made Jules tell the truth that like she didn't like the coach. And if you needed to have the coach in the love triangle, I think it would have been fun if Jess was jealous of the coach. Oh my God, no. See, again, these names are messing me up. Jess and Jules, Olivia and Viola. I think it would have been fun if Jules was jealous of the coach and it's because she had feelings for Jess. I think that would have been very fun. Like another reason it probably didn't go full send into the lesbian love story is the through line of adversity was already that Jess was trying to play soccer in a Punjabi household. So if you made it like Jess is trying to play soccer and be gay in a Punjabi household, it would have been kind of crazy and very messy. So in this movie, Jess is doing a secret life. She pretends to get a job so she can go play soccer in her league. Like I said at the very start of talking about this movie, Natalie Portman looks like a lesbian. She just does. That's not to say that like lesbians have to look a certain way. There is like a very vast spectrum of, you know, feminine to masculine and everywhere in between. There is no rules on how you have to look to be a lesbian. All that to say, Natalie Portman's character, Jules, looks like a lesbian. And there's so many other like pieces of evidence. Jules' mom is like, she has all these butch women on her wall. Jules doesn't like bras, the whole thing. So this entire movie, people are acknowledging kind of the allegations that Jules and Jess actually are in a lesbian relationship. And they do not do much to beat the allegations. They don't. There are so many people around them that think that they're dating for good reason because like they go on a little trip, which I like to say is a date, to go get shoes. There's that part where they're laughing at the bus stop and it looks like they're kissing. And then Jess's sister's future in-laws see them and they're like, oh, she's kissing this boy. And it's like, no, that's her friend. But it does look like they are kissing. And then I think it's really funny that Jess reacts to this and goes, kissing? Me? A boy? So what is that supposed to mean, Jess? Huh? And then right after they win their big soccer game, they come out of the locker room and they kind of like kiss. Like it's not like lips, but it's also not just a cheek. Like there's something like in the middle and it's like, whoa, what are we doing, guys? And then like this whole movie, they're talking about like moving to America and like playing professional soccer together. And it's like, you guys are planning your futures together and you're just supposed to be friends? Yeah. Okay. I feel like you guys would be roommates. Yeah? Roommates? Mm-hmm. And then Jules's mom, biggest ally there's ever been, she's like thinking that they broke up and that's why Jules is so upset, even though Jules is upset because Jess almost kissed the coach, which again, not necessary for the story. And like they should have been dating this whole time. I think a rite of passage within a sapphic's life is having that like really devastating homoerotic friendship that like just ends tragically. And maybe that's what was happening with Jess and Jules. Jules's mom was a great ally. She had no problem with Jules possibly being a lesbian. And she was kind of just thinking about how her life would be different if she did come out, which I think is a valid thing for parents to be concerned about. They want their child to live the best life. And then this kind of all culminates into the best scene in the movie. Like it's hands down the best scene in the movie where her mom comes in and tells her to, she goes, get your lesbian feet out of my shoes. Someone in the crowd goes, her birthday's in March. I thought she was a Pisces. And then someone else goes, she's not Lebanese, she's Punjabi. Jules and her mom are driving away. And Jules is like, just because I wear trackies and I'm into sport doesn't mean I'm a lesbian. And it's like, maybe it does, Jules. Maybe it does. And my favorite thing about kind of looking into this subtext is that so many people acknowledge that it's there. And sometimes even the actors or the directors will. Have I been saying Natalie Portman this whole time? That is not Natalie Portman. You idiot. You idiot. And so now this is me realizing that I've said Natalie Portman instead of Keira Knightley, which I don't know where the fuck that came from. They ask Keira Knightley whether she thinks that Jules and Jess should have been together, and she says yes, she does. And she thinks they should have been together, and if there's a sequel, perhaps they can have that work, which I love that. Not only do they know that this movie has been embraced by the queer community, but they also acknowledge the queerness within it. Continuing with the trend of characters that look like lesbians, now we're going to talk about a sport that we haven't touched on, which is gymnastics. And this is the movie Stick It. So I watched all these movies before I made this video, and this was the first time I'd ever watched this movie. And I loved it. It's a great movie, just generally very 2000s, and like the quick and witty writing, and I feel like they just don't write comedies like this anymore. This movie is about a teenager named Haley who has kind of been getting in trouble with the law, and she either is going to be sent to a military academy or a gymnastics studio, because in her youth she was really good at gymnastics, and so she gets sent to the gymnastics studio headed by Jeff Bridges, and she has to compete and kind of relearn the sport that she used to love. Again, reiterating, lesbians don't have to look a certain way, yada yada yada. However, Haley dresses and looks like a lesbian. She does. I literally wrote it in my Letterboxd review. I was like, if I saw this movie when I was younger, I probably would have figured out I was gay sooner. I think like like honestly, just how she looks is like evidence enough to be like, yeah, she's gay. I don't know if you can necessarily make a case for any specific couple within this movie, because it is definitely more about feminism and like female solidarity and stuff like that. There is this part where there's like these guys coming out of a gym and Joanne's like ogling them, and Haley like doesn't even give them the time of day, which is very funny and also lesbian. Haley has like two guy friends. One of them's Kellen Lutz from Twilight, and she doesn't see them at all as potential romantic interests. And even when Joanne asks her about it, and she's like, are they your boyfriends? And she goes, no. And then Joanne's like, why not? Because like Joanne's kind of like boy obsessed. Haley just responds with ew, which so true, especially like if you have guy friends that are just your friends and you're like, why does everyone have to ship us together? Like, just like girls and guys can be friends. And then just like separately, those two guy friends, they're kind of gay for each other. They kind of are. They kind of joke about it, that they're like hetero life mates or whatever. Something I did appreciate about this movie is that Haley doesn't end up with a guy, and she doesn't have to. Some of these other movies that I've been talking about kind of would benefit from that, of like not really forcing that to happen if it doesn't need to be, you know? So another movie where this happens, where the girl doesn't end up with a guy, is Cadet Kelly, which is the Hilary Duff Disney Channel original movie. Very military propaganda-esque, I will say that. However, here, there is definitely something going on. So in this movie, Hilary Duff's character, Kelly, she gets sent to a military school because her new stepdad is the like principal. That's not what it's called, but like the head of the military school. When I was watching this movie, I was like, I don't know if this necessarily needed to happen. Like, I don't think she needed to be forced to go to this military school, but I digress. Yes, we're in a military school, not necessarily a sports movie. However, she does get on the drill team, and that's kind of like a big part of the movie. So I think that's sports enough. Focusing on Stone and Kelly, they have some crazy banter and bickering going on. If you like the bully trope, you'll probably like this ship. I mean, it's not like overt bullying, but it's definitely like power dynamic, lots of like name calling. Stone calls Kelly a maggot for a very long time, and they're just like all up in each other's faces, and the vibes and the tension are pretty great. And then I have a list of moments that they have. So there's a part where Kelly gets stuck at the top of a rope tower and is too afraid to come down. Stone bats her eyes at Kelly when she's stuck up there. After like a long day at the obstacle course, Kelly is covered in mud, and she comes into this dance that they're holding, and she quite literally falls for Stone, like into her arms. As she's trying to catch her, they kind of like dance. It's like kind of funny. Once they get over their whole like I hate you thing, they actually end up working together for the drill team. She tells her, you are my partner, I work with you, which they've come so far. At the end of the movie, Kelly finds out that Stone is leaving the school, and she's actually very sad about it because they're gonna break up. A thing that kind of exemplifies this whole movie is Kelly has this rainbow blanket that she loves and she sleeps with, right? And Stone rips up her rainbow blanket. And you know what rainbows are synonymous with? Gay pride. There's like this Letterboxd review that's like, Stone rips up Kelly's gay blanket with her gay hands. The rainbow blanket was kind of meant to represent like individuality in the face of conformity at a military school. And like, there could be a parallel there of like representing, you could say gayness, and then like her ripping it up and saying like, well, you can't be gay in the military. Justice for the blanket, but like it does a lot for the analysis of the subtext. Within this movie, there is like another guy, his name is Brad, and they are kind of competing for him, but at the end of the day, they kind of just like give up and they don't really care about him. There was definitely more tension between them two than Kelly had with Brad. There was like the shoe shining scene where like he spits on her shoe and like there was supposed to be something, but like it didn't really play as anything. Like I said, at the end of it, nobody really won. Nobody really got with him. And I think that was really nice to see. They didn't really fully commit to that idea of them competing over him, and at the end of the day it was about them two coming together and like helping their school win the military drill competition. Like I was talking about before with Keira Knightley acknowledging the gayness in Bend It Like Beckham, Hilary Duff very recently actually has acknowledged what was going on between Stone and Kelly. She was saying how people have brought up to her that like they were gay, and like now that she looks at it, she's like, yeah, they were. I think there's something about having the people involved in a movie kind of acknowledge the things that you're seeing. It's very affirming. Like I said in the intro of like people were like, why do you have to make everything gay and blah blah blah. And it's like, no, sometimes there is legitimate subtext, and like we're not crazy for looking into it, and we're not crazy for resonating with the material either. And so having the creatives, acknowledge it does validate it. And then lastly, I do have a bonus movie that does have gay vibes built in, but it is lacking in something that kind of didn't make it a solid entry into this video, but it is Whip It, starring Elliot Page. And this is about like a roller skating derby team. Like that's the sport, roller derby, that's what it's called. And Elliot Page's character is a minor in this like world of like adult women, but his character in the movie is kind of finding herself in this world of roller derby and kind of expressing something that she hasn't tapped into. It's directed by Drew Barrymore, which love Drew Barrymore. Juliette Lewis is in it. Kristen Wiig is in it. It's crazy cast, lots of fun. The only reason it's like a bonus is because like you can't really ship her with anyone in the movie because they're all like adult women and she's in high school, so it would be not ethical. I don't know much about roller derby, but like I just feel like there are lesbians in roller derby, so there should have been someone. Like it was kind of insane that like nobody within the league was like dating each other. Again, consistent with the video, there is like this idea of the secret life of roller derby can be conflated with queerness, and how she had to hide her going to practices and going to games or matches, and that can also have to do with how people have to hide their sexualities and stuff like that. So that was Whip It. I mean, I wanted to mention it because like I feel like it is a gay movie. So those are all the 2000 sports movies that I thought should have been gay. Let me know if I missed any. I will say, pay some respects to the OG, but I'm a cheerleader. 1999, full send, full camp, full gay. Some honorable mentions, I would say, to High School Musical 2. Hear me out. Chad and Ryan, I Don't Dance, is a gay song. It's a gay song. And then also, why did they change clothes at the end of the song? Why are they wearing each other's clothes? There is like a gay interpretation of that song. And then kind of on that flip side, the lesbian sister of that song is Dance Me If You Can from Cheetah Girls, One World. Dance is a sport, So to cap off this video, I did compile a list of recent queer sapphic sports media that you can check out if you want. So for books, I have She Drives Me Crazy, which is a YA cheerleader basketball player romance. Love that book. I hope that it'll get adapted because it's like one of my favorites. Cleat Cute, which is a soccer romance, which is actually being adapted into a show by Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird with their production company. And if you don't know who those people are, and you should, they are sports legends, soccer and basketball respectively. Also, they're like a couple. They're engaged. I don't think they got married yet. There's one that I read called Home Field Advantage, which is a football player cheerleader. Not as good, but still there. There are probably so many others. Like there's a lacrosse one, I know. As for TV shows, the really big one recently was A League of Their Own, which is inspired by the movie from the 90s, which was gay. But this one's full on lesbian with the women's baseball team, and it got canceled after one season, and it is probably one of the best shows I've ever seen. And it's just evidence that lesbians get paid dirt by the media. Coming up this year in 2026 is a show called Slow Pitch, which is about a queer softball team. It is produced by Elliot Page, and it's coming from Crave, who are the same people in Canada that produced Heated Rivalry, and it is based on a web series that came out in like 2020. And then as for movies, I have a couple. Love Lies Bleeding, which is the bodybuilding one with Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien. That one's like not necessarily like full on romance. It is just like there is a romance, but it is much more. It's like a crime thriller. That one I have seen. The next ones I haven't seen, and I should check them out. There's a movie called Forever, which came out in 2023. It's a soccer movie. Then there's a movie called Backspot 2023, which is a gymnastics movie. Breaking the Ice, hockey from 2022. The Novice, a swimming one from 2021. And then Rookie from 2023, and that's a volleyball movie. So I'm gonna get to watching those. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I'm not the only one that has picked up on these things. I feel like I'm not. Like, so many people, especially like the more popular movies, She's the Man, Bet It Like Beckham, Ice Princess, people are picking up on the gay vibes all the time. I feel like after like there are 4 movies, like there just had to be more, so I just compiled a list and I was like, let me watch them all and like definitively find where and why all of these movies should have been gay. Here's hoping that the lesbians get their version of heated rivalry someday, because the people want it. The people want it. It's 2026. We shouldn't have to exist in subtext anymore. There are so many queer stories that you can tell about women in sports. And yes, there's the real life stories, but also there should be fictional ones, and there should be so many. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. Watch as much sapphic media as you can, and I'll see you in the next one.